So I've been playing this riff ever since I was in high school. Ever since I heard it, I liked it. I was never a huge Static X fan, but when I was a kid, they were on MTV, and I would like their songs when they came on the TV. And as soon as I heard this song, I liked it. It's one of my favorite songs by Static X. So I've always kind of played this riff, and this is another one of those riffs where I might joke around with it a bit on the classical guitar, and then one day kind of realize, I actually think you can study this thing and look at it in a couple of important ways. There's two ways that I feel like I can really study this riff that go hand in hand with at least the things that I'm thinking about today. One is tempo and rhythm. The other is, sound production, which I say a lot, but this certain type of sound production, trying to imitate the qualities you hear on the Static X track. So first, let's talk about the rhythm and the tempo. So I don't know about you, but whenever I'm playing the guitar, one of the priorities is, am I playing in tempo? Am I playing the rhythms where I want them? I want to feel like I'm in control, and I want to feel like I am totally in sync with the music. If I can't play in tempo, that doesn't happen. A lot of my work is spent trying to find the tempo and see what it feels like. Even if I can find it, then I just want to spend time there. I just want it to be something I can find immediately. So locked in that you feel like you can do anything. So working on a riff like this, that's pretty basic, the same chord, but a specifically syncopated rhythm, is a great kind of tempo warm-up for me to do. To sit with the guitar after the fingers are kind of warmed up, and I want to do something that helps me lock in with the tempo. Then I'll play something like this. The loud sounds are good to warm up your guitar too. This type of motion is good for your hand to hopefully get loose and feel powerful. And then the rhythm is so strong here. Hopefully, if you're going to play this thing, you can't help but be compelled to be so locked in, that you really want to sound like a synthesizer, really. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. You want to be that locked in, if you can be. And then when you go on to whatever you're going to work on, your tempo will probably change. Maybe your mood changes drastically. But hopefully your reliable, consistent tempo doesn't change, no matter the tempo that you play at. So something like this that's highly rhythmic, really driving, really helps me get in the mood for really latch onto the tempo, feel it out, put the rhythms exactly where they are, hit the nail right on the head, no guesswork and no insecure placement of the rhythms. Everything is just right where you feel it to be, and that will work if you're feeling the tempo. I think. I hope. And of course, feel free to experiment, improvise a little bit, do whatever keeps you interested. It's a great warm-up for getting into the feel of tempo, which for me, I really can't do enough. The other main way that I like to think about this riff when playing it is, of course, studying sound production. In this case, I want to emulate the qualities that we hear in the sound of the original track by Static X. You hear the guitars and the bass drum all locked in together to make this massive pulverizing sound. And every hit is of equal volume. It's like every hit is an accent, and it gives it a very cool effect, a very wall of sound type of effect. So I'll go over a couple of techniques that you can experiment with, and then come up with your own techniques, of course, when playing a riff like this. The one I use at the beginning is the one I do most often, and it's just a quick backstroke with the thumb. And for me, it comes from just turning the arm. The thumb doesn't really do anything. Okay, it's aimed with the arm, but it feels very loose. And if you just keep a small range of motion, okay, so it's very focused, and then go right into the strings, you get the sound jumping out of the guitar, and really happening as one sound, hopefully. And it's a little bit of a rough sound, I'm not sure if there's a place for this sound, in your classical guitar degree recital program. There might be, but there's a good chance there might not be. But I've got something for you guys too, so don't worry about that. I'll get to that in just a minute. But when playing it like this, to really help me get into the rhythm, I add this muted downstroke with the index finger. And I'm not really into all this stuff. Okay, good for those people, but I don't like to play like that. I think golpe is great when flamenco guitarists do it. I like that. That's where I draw the line. But this thing is just, I don't have to move the hands. My hands are already here, and it helps me add a percussive hit to really get into the rhythm. So that's what I'm doing there. I think it's a fun way to play it. If you didn't add that extra hit, it'd still be a fun way to study it, right? But it kind of helps me get into the groove, to add that syncopation in there. So I think that's a cool sound to get, and to cultivate it so it feels very easy. If it's a loud sound with a bunch of attack, it feels much easier than you'd think to get that. Okay, just turn the arm. If it feels really difficult, then for me, I wouldn't be able to use it. I've got to keep things managed. I don't want to stress my hands too much. So finding an easy way to get that loud sound. And if you do rasgueados, okay, this motion will definitely come in handy for you, with a bunch of different patterns. So I think it's a cool thing to study. And with this rhythm, when you have those quick hits in a row, that'll make sure you're being relaxed. Because if you're not, you're locked up here, and you can't get back in time. So it's a good little trick in the riff to make sure you can stay relaxed to keep the rhythm going. I also like to play it sometimes. Of course, here I'm still thinking kind of loud and aggressive. Okay. With down rasgueados with the fingers. So right there I'm using I. But then you can use all the fingers. And sometimes it's fun to try and make them all sound the same. So that was I. Now let's do M. Okay, let's do A. And you can even try pinky. Why not? Let's try it. And with those, when I add that percussive hit, it's just an upstroke. Down, down, up, down, down, up. That's another fun way I like to practice it. Good for a warm-up, I guess, for all the fingers, for rasgueados. There's a few other ways you could do like thumb only chords. Again, really focusing on the sound jumping out. That's a good technique for wanting sound to come powerfully and quickly. Sounds a little bit more separated when I do it than it does with the thumb strokes like this. But for you classical players, okay, like I said, you may not have a place for this sound in your classical guitar program, or maybe even this sound. This is a pretty harsh sound in your classical guitar. You're not going to hear that in a Bach piece or a Renaissance piece, probably. So if you're playing music like that, you can still study this riff. Let's just turn it into a chord study. So let's do P, I, and M together in this chord, and turn it into a free stroke chord study. And there's just a ton of things you could do here. You could study the concept of them all being accents, so you want them to have the same attack and same power behind each one. And again, if I'm going to study this, a point of emphasis is not tiring out my hand too much. Of course, if I keep doing this, eventually I will get tired. But it not being a stressful move. Getting as much sound as I can get, and being able to relax fast enough so that it doesn't hurt my hand. You could study it in dynamics. You could study it in different finger combinations here. Okay, so we were doing P, I, and M. Now let's do I, M, and A. Or you could do a weird one like P, M, and A. So you could use it for a lot of free stroke stuff, a lot of chord stuff. And being able to play a chord like exactly as one sound, where the sound just jumps out and has a really nice attack, is useful in so many different things for classical guitar. And even if you don't use 100% of your power, if you work that strength into your plucking hand, then it will be there. If you only need, 60% or whatever the case is. But your chord technique will be there. And you'll have built that strength in your hand. So you could take this riff apart in all these ways, really work on syncing in with the rhythm, and then your sound production, getting this sound that they get on the track. Fast attack, loud, strong, and then feeling all those things technically in your hands so that you can get them as easy as you can, and it doesn't add too much extra stress in your technique, so that you can use the sound whenever you want, and it can be very beneficial.